Hi, my name is Kristen and welcome back to Learn English with Be Global. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about how to speak American English like a native. Now, if you're a native, then speaking English is natural to you. You were probably born in the United States or maybe Canada, and English is your first language, and American English is what you grew up learning. So it's natural to you, and it's your native language. So how to speak American English like a native is what we're going to learn today. Isn't that a mouthful of a topic? Now, if I were to say that in a slower way for you to understand, the way that I speak to you when I'm teaching, I really try to break down the words so that you understand it, so that you can learn better and understand more fully what it is that I'm trying to teach. Because I understand that English is new to you and that you are trying to learn it for the first time. So I would say, isn't that a mouthful of a topic? We're going to revisit that in a minute. But first, I want to go over just a few things that can help you to learn how to speak like a native. So for American English, one of the first things that you really need to focus on is pronunciation. Pronunciation of the words is how they sound. How do the words sound? Because how they sound is then how you are going to pronounce them. And that's going to affect your pronunciation, which is in turn going to affect whether you sound like a native speaker or whether you sound like someone that is learning English for the first time. How you pronounce those words and how you speak them based on how those words sound is going to make that difference, okay? So, based on that, we want to go over a few different things, because when you are learning English for the first time and you learn the basic principles of English, it's very different when you are learning how you're supposed to say the words and how they end up sounding when you are a native speaker. There is a big difference. We speak very quickly, definitely. Native English American speakers and English speakers speak quickly. And that being said, many of the words end up running together. So for instance, then the consonants end up running together as well. So if I were to say, for an example, if you look at this question, before I say it out loud, I want you to say it to yourself. So now if we're going to break it down, we would say, what time is it? What time is it? So you are asking about the time. However, for a native American English speaker, we would run it together. So instead of saying, what time is it? We would end up saying, what time is it? So this T and this T end up coming together. So it almost makes one word, what time, instead of what time. What time is it? When you have consonants that have the same sound at the end of the word and at the beginning of a word, they run together. We blend them into almost sounding like one word. I hope that makes sense for you. Let me give you another example. Once again, I want you to say it to yourself first. These are actually two different consonants, but they have a very similar sound. So if we separate it, we have that door is open. But we wouldn't say that door is open. That makes it very succinct and separate. Now, I want you to know, you can easily say that door is open, and we will know what you're talking about. However, a native American English speaker would say, that door is open. That door. That door. Do you hear how it runs together? The T and the D end up becoming one sound. That door. So it no longer separates because it's a similar sound. Let me give you one more example that's very similar, okay? Once again, say that one on your own. So if we say it together separately, there's a black cat. Now, if we run it together, there's a black cat. There's a black cat. Black cat. There's a black cat. The whole thing almost runs together in that phrase. It's no longer there is a black cat, but it's there's a black cat. It almost sounds like one full word instead of an entire sentence. I can see how that would be so confusing when you're learning English for the first time and trying to master the native American English. There's a black cat. So those end up running together. Another good thing to point out right now, since I used one, is the contraction. We use contractions a lot. In our everyday language in American English, we regularly will take, instead of saying there is, we will say there's. Instead of saying do not, we will say don't. Instead of saying is not, we will say isn't. These are just a few very small examples because there truly are so very many. So we have these different examples of run-ins together here. We also have some words that we run together. So for example, we have the word business. Business. If you look at that word, you want to pronounce it busyness or business. But the way that we actually pronounce it is one full sweep. It almost sounds like this. Business. This almost sounds like a Z. Business. You almost don't even hear that I in the middle. Another example, let me write it out for you. When you look at this and separate it, we've got comfort and we have table. So you would think that it's comfortable, but the way that we say it is comfortable. Comfortable. It runs together. Comfortable. Okay? Another small example would be restaurant. There's a U there that we don't really say. We say restaurant. We don't say restaurant or restaurant. It's just restaurant. So there are like I said, I keep saying this, but it's just so true. There are so many examples of ways that the native American English is different, and it's very hard to pick up on some of those little nuances. So I wanted to give you a few examples of little things that you can kind of work on as you're going through your English lessons and your vocabulary. So one more thing that I'm going to throw at you today, just for you to practice, is the soft T. So whenever we have anything that has a T, oftentimes we end up making it sound like a D instead of a T. Example, when we have the words better, instead of better, we would say better. So it sounds like D instead of T. Better. Another example is metal. Metal. It ends up having a soft T sound, which then sounds like a D. Or setting. Setting. It has that soft T or D sound. Instead of saying setting, you would say setting. So these are just a few pronunciation aspects of learning to speak like a native American English speaker. And then a few other things I just kind of would like to run by you is to make sure that you look into different sayings and phrases. The hard thing with American English is we have such a large country. We have the United States. Don't you love my drawing of the United States? Pretty great, I think. And then we have Canada. Definitely a great drawing of Canada. So between the two countries, we have so many different ways of speaking. So even in American English, for the full of North America, I am in California. We have different sayings and different ways of speaking here in California, over here, than they do in Texas. In Texas, they have a completely different accent. They say y'all, and they talk with a different drawl. They have a completely different accent than we do here, than they do in New York. They have different slang, different ways of speaking in New York, and they have different ways of speaking in Canada. So it's really hard because when you're learning to speak like a native American English speaker, I encourage you to learn the different sayings. Get an idiom dictionary. Study phrases, slang, and sayings from the region that you're interested in, or the region that you plan to visit. Whatever region that may be, that's where you want to learn from, because they're all so different. And one great way, if you're not sure, if this is all so overwhelming to you and you don't know where to start, I recommend that you start by just watching television. Find some American movies and American TV that you like and start watching them on a regular basis. That's the greatest way to really learn the Native American English, because most television has examples from all over the different regions. They have movies that are based in California. They have movies that are based in New York. They have movies that are based in Texas, in the Midwest, all over North America. So you can take a look and see which areas you love and which ones you want to learn from. It's a really great way to study the Native American tongue for American English. So I highly recommend it. I also recommend that you find an American friend to speak to. That's going to give you an invaluable way to learn. When you can learn from a person who has actually spoken the Native American English their whole life, you're truly going to get a firsthand experience of how to learn, and that's going to be the greatest way to go about it. The most important thing to do is practice. Practice and repetition. I can't say it enough. The more that you can study, the more that you practice, the more that you repeat these sayings, go through, even if you go through this lesson 100 times and just practice these simple little sentences and running those words together is going to make a big difference. So as I said earlier, I do want to go through this sentence. So I had said, isn't that a mouthful of a topic? That's the proper way to speak that out. Isn't that a mouthful of a topic? Now, in my Native American English, the way that I would say that is, isn't that a mouthful of a topic? Do you hear how that all runs together? Let me say it one more time. I will try to speak a little bit slower for you, but still in the Native American English. One more time. Isn't that a mouthful of a topic? Do you hear how the T's end up being silent? This runs together. Isn't that a mouthful of a? Did you hear how those ran together? Isn't that a mouthful of a topic? And then this goes up at the end because it's a question. Isn't that a mouthful of a topic? I hope that I've been able to help you today. This is truly a huge lesson. We probably could have broken this into 4 different parts because there is so much to be learned when it comes to trying to speak like a native speaker. I encourage you to keep learning, keep trying, and don't get discouraged. I know that it's hard, but the more that you practice, I know that you can do it. Please continue to subscribe to my page. Hit that like button and ask me any questions that you may have. I appreciate your support. Thank you for joining us here today at Learn English with Be Global. Again, my name is Kristen, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.